Hello, 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 hello. It's episode 3 of our Vision Denial. We got over here Connor, and I'm Sam. For those who don't know, we are a channel that does just discussions and videos about international League of Legends competitions. And today we've got groups that have completed and ended, and we've got our top 8.
You do indeed.
We do indeed have our top 8. And the first question I'll ask you is, how much of this top 8 were you expecting?
I mean, I think everyone's been saying like there's never been a 4-way tie or anything like that before, right? Like that's just like the hype levels just went up because everyone's like, oh,
It's a 4-way
anything
tie.
can happen. This is anyone's group. Like, 3-way tie in the other group. Like everything's just all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not really a matter of like, okay, which teams actually won that. I think it's worth having the conversation saying like, hey, we still need to talk about and appreciate, even on our end in North America, like 100 Thieves and Team Liquid for what they did and for getting those wins.
Yeah.
Even if you're saying, right?
And for context, this happens most years where much of our North American teams will grab a comeback win out of nowhere when it's too little too late.
Yep.
But like there is a significant
Constantly.
there's a significant contextual difference given here, where it isn't like one random team made it out of nowhere, or all of the teams barely made it and had just one last huzzah that kind of like shook things up as if they were the underdogs the entire time. This looked like two teams who a lot of were like they're likely to get out given like if they played right. And then they played exactly as or above expectations. And then we had a third North American team everybody thought was going to flop and did not. And in fact made it top 8.
Well, there's a few ways of looking at that. Like, since we're talking about North America, my opinion is Cloud9 was not the top North American team in group stage.
Correct. I agree. 100%.
Right? Like, if we look at like that 4-way tie in Group D, we're saying Team Liquid, who took a game off everyone, went 1-1 against every single team, right, was the better team. It's just a matter of you're saying like if Rogue's a bit weaker competition, and then FPX only 2 out of 5 players showed up.
Yeah.
Realistically, right? Like Doinby still had a great tournament. Needs to be said. Doinby still did Doinby things. It's not like, oh, Doinby's bad. No, it's that. It's what is it? Him and
it's really weird to look at this context because like this reminds me a whole lot of how the 2019 World Championships rolled out. And for those who were unaware, 2019 was a year where I had a tweet that I put out where I was like, most North American teams were equal to or better than European teams. And then everybody had a hissy fit about it. And yet somehow it was pretty true to the end of it. Fnatic overperformed and G2 did G2 things. And that was the only European team that I had higher than any North American team. But like this year, a lot of people had only one European team in high hopes in Mad Lions, and they underperformed. In fact, I think they made it out barely.
Oh, for sure. You can't look at the 4-way tie and say anybody, that was anybody's game at that point, right? Like all 4 of those teams reasonably could have deserved to go on, right? Like getting out after going 3-3 kind of sucks. Like that's, and especially like getting in after going 3-3, you're like, phew, right?
Especially since Team Liquid was technically seeded first and Gen G was seeded last in that four-way tie. That's how that worked.
Oh, yeah.
Team Liquid had the
'Cause
fastest game time, and were then seeded first and had seed choice of like side choice.
kind of a different topic, but since you mentioned it, what's with the average game time? It's like we get into day 2 and everyone's like afraid to do stuff,
To do
like afraid of
yes.
the game time. It's like let's have 45-minute average game time.
I don't understand. Like this is a thing too. Is that like like middle of groups average game time goes high, end of groups game times go slow. It goes like low. It's much faster. Which is unfortunate. Which is really weird given the fact that this meta should have prioritized very fast games.
It should have, yeah.
It really should have. Like despite the idea of like enchanter supports seemingly extending the game forever, it should have just extended laning phase and shortened mid game to end the game.
Yeah, it's like even the champions like the Rels and the Kennons were only going in when they had flash advantage.
Yeah.
Like, okay, sure, that's a really good situation for you, but like, you don't necessarily need flash advantage on a Rel in order to make the play.
It feels really bizarre.
As good as Core JJ looked on that champion, for example.
Yeah. And I think I want to, like, if I was a slightly even less lazy editor, I would roll the tape and find the video in World Watch where I was like, this is the most competitive Worlds we'll have to date. And if I'm not a lazy editor, I'd be like, roll tape and then it'll happen.
Yep.
I know it won't happen. But I did mention that this was going to be the most competitive year. Like, as much as we joked about Cloud9 being 17th out of all of the teams, I also said that the range of this, like the gap between each individual team, is not huge.
Yep.
And I think this particular day showed it fantastically, or like this particular group showed that fantastically. Because I don't think people looking at the stuff that was coming and going like, we have darn near a third of the people in group stage being previous world champions or on world champion rosters. And like, oh yeah, this is a close groups across the board for all teams. But no, this was close across the board for all the teams, including Detonation Focus Me, who lost 0-6. And same with Fnatic, who like, despite
Maria had an amazing tournament.
yeah,
I mean, solo killed Faker.
that's not an accomplishment.
It's
not
sure, but it's something he can say that. Like, you know, no one's gonna.
That sentence is only good pre 2015.
Sure, but like, considering his region and considering like, you know, that he's from that emerging region kind of thing.
Yes,
that is. Yeah, if you're talking about like an LCK player or someone, you're like, yeah, he solo killed Faker. It's like, okay, sure, he's played him 100 times. Chances are he did it in one of those games. But for someone from the emerging region who just made it through, that's still has at least a little bit of weight to it.
I think it's mostly because a lot of people don't know about like the Japanese region and how many of them have like Korean imports that are technically Japanese native players. Like 3 out of the 5 players in Detonation Focus Me are Korean, but are like native Japanese players because they were there since the start of the league.
Yeah, they're kind of like there's a lot of people that move back and forth between Japan and Korea. Like they are, South Korea and Japan are fairly close culturally to a certain extent, so that does kind of make sense.
Yeah. We'll gloss
like,
over a whole lot of extra nuance.
Well, yeah, that's a whole lot of stuff into that. But like, it's like saying there's a lot of Americans in Canada and Canadians in the States.
Yeah.
They get along, and there's.
Mm-hmm. I think it's one of those things because there's a lot of because Korean imports in anywhere into the Eurasia and Oceanic Peninsula is fairly common. So like it's not surprising that a lot of players with high caliber are around that area, given the pedigree of a lot of Korean players and how they're brought up into that sphere.
for sure. But like what I'm saying is like if you're maybe like just borderline can't quite get into the LCK,
Yeah.
what region's going to feel the most like home? Japan,
Mm.
right? For example.
Yeah. No, you're right.
But that's a separate topic.
I think. Uh, I think there's a lot to be said about, in terms of this groups, right? I think there's a lot to be said about how weird the seating changes also affected the way that we were expecting some of these results to go through. And on top of it, I think, and a lot of people have mentioned it before, is like it's unfortunate that a lot of our interregional games are not best of fives. And so, like, it's the same discussion. It's like, should there be a losers bracket from, like, the groups bracket where, like, the lower seeded teams go down onto the lower seeded of the bracket and then, like, best of fives move on from there on so forth, which I think should happen. I've argued a whole bunch about how Worlds should technically have more games or be longer. And that,
Well, even if it's just like similar to LCS playoffs, it's just that the double elimination setup that works. Because yeah, they talked about it like I think they don't have the double elimination in certain regions, and they're like, people were looking ahead to I think it was RNG EDG, and they're like, yeah, RNG got a like random loss early in the playoffs and was just out, kind of thing.
they still got into the regionals. Like,
Sure.
so there is a form of a losers bracket in all 5 legacy regions. Either
Right. Yeah.
an actual losers bracket or a significant equivalent to a loser
With the
bracket,
gauntlet stuff.
right?
Yeah.
All 5 legacy regions, including almost every single one of the emerging regions, save for it's Turkey, Brazil, and Latin America, have losers brackets.
Yeah.
Do you know how wild it is that out of all 12 regions, and I'm including the VCS, out of all 12 regions, 9 of the 12, 3/4, have losers brackets for their to determine who goes to Worlds.
Yep.
And yet Worlds has the least competitive bracket out of all of those.
No, it's really true because it's something we said about like, well, if we saw like for example how close Group D is, it's like, well, maybe, yeah, like some of those teams like should they really be out right away, or is it just like, well,
Right? Like even just having like
yeah.
the third place of all of those groups go down to the lower bracket round 1 of a loser's bracket. Immediately people are buzzing with excitement about who they would go up against. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, something like all the, whatever, like all the third place teams play until there's one remaining kind of thing, and then the 2 teams that like
The way that I look at it is I look at it more like similar to the LCS bracket where like the
yeah, once you drop down.
so you the top 8 teams, the 4 losers go against the bottom the third place teams and move on to that type of losers bracket scenario.
Yeah.
Cuz to me that makes sense. Does that not?
Yeah.
Cuz the group stages are meant to be shown as a way to seed things out to make it more streamlined, and the best of 5 is usually the place where we're like, "Oh, yes, this is where we can tell for sure who's the better team." Best of 5s have always been the better format for figuring out which team is better over another.
Yeah, it'd be hard to do with 4 groups. Like, you have to almost adjust that. But if you had like the 4 groups, first place in every group almost gets a bye,
Mm.
right? Because it's like that's a lot of buys, though.
I don't think it. I think what matters more is that
Anyway,
a lot of the top 16 teams,
Mhm.
or a lot of like at least the top 12 teams, feel as if they don't they don't play enough games to even represent what that means to be in the top half of this leaderboard.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like your top 12, your top 50% of the teams who've gone to Worlds, and the best you can show for it is the equivalent amount of distance that the fourth place team of your group did.
Yeah,
that
true.
feels incredibly bizarre, right?
Yeah, that team that like barely like we'll have groups sometimes where it's like, yeah, you could in theory get like 3 contenders to win the whole thing in the same group if the brackets work out like that, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. Like that, the number of times that as has happened is too high, is too big. Right? That happened in 2019, actually, to be specific. Because like you can do like hindsight is whatever. But if you look at the group that had RNG and Fnatic in it,
oh yeah, because it's RNG. Fnatic was still pretty highly rated, and SKT.
Yep.
So you're like,
those are 3 teams who were high contenders in the tournament in the same group.
It's true.
Right, and I think it's just the unfortunate factor of having to seed a lot of these teams in ways that are like, oh, teams from one region can't face one another, and they're like, all right, that's reasonable, but we can't also have 2 teams from different regions who are like way too high seeded to face off against each other because we want to see them later. I'm like, yeah, but that's not the best indicator of which team is stronger than the other. You're like, no, they're totally weighted equally. I'm like, no, I don't think that's true. SKT, RNG, and Fnatic were not rated in the same seed, and yet all 3 of them highly contested in terms of top 8 teams. We're all in the same group. There's a terrible way to evaluate it. It feels bizarre for me to look at that scenario and go, what is the point of a top seed going into Worlds other than you automatically go and you don't have to do anything?
Or also the like 2017 we had G2, Samsung Galaxy, and RNG in the same group.
Yeah, that's also like you go back enough time. There's enough worlds where that has happened every other world, and that's too high of a statistical likelihood for there to not
like
be a
G2
coincidence.
got knocked out, and it's like, well, like comparing that's like that was the usual like Cloud9 barely squeaks through, and it's like and I think it was Misfits went through, and it's like, well, if G2 beat Misfits consistently all year in the regular season, but then Misfits got an easier group and is able to squeeze out second place, and G2 just happened to be in the same group as RNG and Samsung Galaxy, who's the better team?
Yeah, like how do you evaluate that?
Right? Like,
So I think the conversation is not like it needs a losers bracket. It needs an overhaul. Like the tournament format needs a whole overhaul, and has had a need of an overhaul since 2016.
To be fair, most professional sports and everything don't have losers brackets. Like it's not a thing in hockey and basketball and baseball and things.
And to be other fairness, almost every other esport does.
But it's best of 7 as well. So
yeah, but
a lot of things.
Most every other esports do have losers brackets.
Okay, yeah.
Literally the other world championship tournament that Riot is hosting at the same time right now for Valorant has a losers bracket.
Yeah.
I don't think Riot has the incapability of organizing a competent tournament. We have proof. It is actively happening. Riot, what the fuck? I'm just saying.
Yeah. Right, probably enough of that.
That's probably enough of that. I want to talk about something interesting regarding the large gap between what is our clear first place of the tournament right now, because things change between now and best of fives. They always do. Our clear first place of the tournament and literally everybody else being a mixed bag. Right? Damwon Kia has looked mostly impeccable.
Yeah.
Right? You have these weird individual decisions that cause some like raised eyebrows. But other than that, they are cleanest in terms of like wave manipulation, map movement, individual laning prowess, setting up for neutral objectives, vision control. Like you go down the list of all the qualifications that you need to be a solid team, and you're like S S S A plus S S S, and you go down the line where you're like, well, how do you beat them?
Yeah.
And you're like, just hope one of them has an aneurysm for like half a second, and then like they do something silly.
True, because that's kind of what I was talking about. I was looking at the games and wondering, like, hey, why is this going longer? And I'm kind of seeing these games, and a lot of the times, especially when it's like your Eastern teams versus Western, we're seeing, okay, the kills are even, if maybe even the Western team's ahead, but the Eastern team has a gold lead because they have CS leads across every single lane. And they're doing this, especially Damwon is like the best at it. They're just really slowly like building up CS leads, getting these really tiny little small advantages, and that's how they're winning games. They're saying, okay, we're gonna very slowly deny you a single wave. Okay, now we have a little bit of a gold lead. Okay, let's get a single turret plate. Like there's these really small little things that just very slowly add up. And if we take a longer game and just we're collecting side waves that a little bit better than you, it just keeps adding up over time. And now they're like, okay, well, we've been better at CSing than you, and slightly better on our macro and these things for half an hour. So now we're 5k gold ahead. I think that's kind of the difference specifically with Damwon too, is because they're able to do that on like technically support isn't really involved in that. So all 4 players that do that, like even in the jungle position.
Yeah.
Whereas, like I said about FPX, it's like I'd say Doinby and Crisp showed up, not really the rest of the team.
Yeah, I can see that they had their own individual moments, but to me it felt more like whichever team looked more coordinated helped look like an individual was showing up, right?
Yep.
And I think I've talked about this in length. Cloud9 annoys me the hell and back. But Cloud9 looked organized and not disjointed on their round 2 games. Did you notice that they had far fewer trying to make a hero play moment during their entire escapade? And so everything else that was like their usual go-to of properly doing wave management, properly doing vision and neutral setups actually benefited them in the long run during those games. And they literally only needed to win 3 games.
Yeah. But I think that it kind of comes back to the thing we said earlier about Cloud9. It's like, well, for example, like Perkz was the overall better mid laner on day 2 than a lot of players, for example. Just like as like a general statement. So he was the one being able to get those small leads for his team. Even like Fudge in the top lane was able to do the same thing, like kind of pressure people on Jace and stuff. And that's what we're seeing a lot of going. It's not like, okay, I'm playing Thresh and it's all about, okay, I can land hooks to get us kills and we're going to win the game through that by getting kills. And we're not seeing the assassins really just snowball out of control and win the game. It's, okay, the game is going to be 3-3 at 20 minutes. And then there's going to be that one team fight and the whole game's decided.
Oh, yeah. And just flashbacks to literally the tiebreaker match between Team Liquid and Gen G, where that literally is how that ended up. It was that they had one misplaced team fight where the team had just like had a split decision between Team Liquid, and they were punished for it. And the second that lead was taken, Gen G never let go. And I think that's also another thing, is that the teams that, in my mind, were much better than others, even though they were like close in any particular given skill for anything, with like a sliding scale variant of that, was the ones that once they've captured a lead, ballooned it in a controlled manner.
Yeah, and like that's kind of the way League works to a certain extent. It's like, okay, as soon as we get that big one team fight, we now have a gold lead. So now the
Sure.
enemy team, it's part of, okay, we have a gold lead, but it's also part of their mental going, okay, we just lost this fight 5v5. We do not want to take another 5v5 because we probably, if we didn't win it previously, now that they have more items, we don't win it this time. So
Sure.
as soon as that happens, we're now able to, okay, I can move my vision line forward into the opponent's jungle
Yes.
and start taking 9 camps or
Mhm.
start pushing an extra lane into the tower so you're losing some minions to tower. And as soon as you're, losing a wave to tower and I've taken 9 out of 12 jungle camps, my gold, if I just keep doing that, is just going to slightly increase over time as in,
Oh yeah.
right?
Oh yeah, 100%. But then I would like to reference the LNG Gen G round 2 match. Please tell me how that's supposed to be the natural way to go things, and yet LNG with a what was it again? It was an 8,000 gold lead at 11 minutes had not found a way to close. They had literally was a flame horizon in the top lane. Ale versus I don't remember the top laner at that time.
Fiora?
Yeah, Ale on the Fiora.
Yeah.
Had a flame horizon at 16 minutes.
Yep.
That's a straight up a record. Straight like there is nothing to be said about how crazy ahead LNG was during that game, and yet was the stupidest team I've seen play with that kind of gold lead for this year. There is no point at which they've done no job to properly balloon that lead to the point where Gen G, still in a gold deficit, managed to secure a Baron with relative ease, given
Yeah.
the lead.
And I think what that also comes down to is the team comp, because usually you're like, if Gen G didn't have like wave clear, right? Like you have to actually be able to like siege and like push towers.
Yeah.
And the thing is, well, Azir, stupidly good wave clear,
Yeah.
right? You can just put the soldiers down and just shoot waves. For a jungler, Lee Sin can actually just blow up the waves with his AoE and just, Gordrinker the wave and stuff, right? Like Lee Sin can actually blow up waves. Lulu even has glitter lances, so compared to most supports, she helps with wave clear more if she wants to. Aphelios is good wave clear because you can just, AoE and everything. Crescendo's like,
Sure.
and then Aurelia could just go Q, 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 Q. So their entire team could clear waves. So the entire time they're just sitting back clearing every single wave because they have 5 champs that have good wave clear for their position.
No. So, but if I remember that game correctly,
Yep.
the Aurelia had less gold than the support.
Uh,
That Aurelia literally was put down into the dirt and was irrelevant during that game. Like, you can look at the compositions and just go like, yeah, this is the game plan. But the problem is that the gold lead had been so huge that LNG had no right to being like, oh, we need to play this strategically, passively, no proactivity whatsoever, totally not adjust our vision line to be so aggressively deep that they could not, that they suffocate Gen G, do nothing in terms of using the Fiora to have 3 people have to answer because Fiora was literally 2,000 to 4,000 gold ahead of any of the major carries on Gen G. And that's excluding the Fiora.
Yeah, and they should have just won, but then it's like, it's also just rulers saying, I'm exhaust Aphelios, so it's like he's just flashing in and going, okay, sure you're really fed, but I have, a huge amount of crescendoms built up or something, and I have exhaust.
Yeah.
So I actually win this.
Sure, except like I'm pretty sure they actually had a moment where there were like 3v1 against the Fiora, and the Fiora got 2 kills and got away. This is what I mean. Like, the second you know that is possible, why have you done nothing else around the map? Why have you let them even the opportunity to get close to the Baron, or even close to the blue buff? There is a legitimate like.
Here's the other thing that really bugs me about that game.
Yeah.
Locket Rakan. Are you just building Locket on every single support? It's like the entire reason why Rakan is good is because of his potential to dash around, get off those really long range engages, right?
Yeah.
To be able to jump on someone out of nowhere, just out of fog, just boom, Rakan's on top of you, charm, knock up, my entire team can now follow up, and I can dash away still after. Like, it's that explosive engage. So you go Shurelia's because it's that on click when I need it,
Speed
explosive
boost.
engage.
Yeah.
And it gives, I think it's move speed when you shield the ally. So you E to the ally, get the extra move speed plus the Shurelya's proc, and it's like 60% move speed just while that procs with your ultimate. So you're at like whatever 210% bonus move speed, and it's just boom. That extra difference between 150 and 210 is huge. With the Shurelya's proc and the extra move speed on top and everything. And you
Yeah.
have ability power. So it's like making your
It's effectively going like slightly more than doubling to tripling your movement speed.
yeah. So it's like, well, okay, you have tank stats, sure, but like one that didn't matter because when the only times he died and stuff is when he just got like thrown into the whole team. And on Rakan, your goal is to charm everybody. While they're charmed, I can run away, right? Like you don't want to be frontline tanking as Rakan. That is not your job.
No. I just
Do not play frontline tank Rakan.
LNG at this LNG because I think there might be some confusion about how a lot of people expected. All right, so just throw it back, way back when we had Josh also here,
Yep.
who, if people are wondering, he will eventually join us. He's just a little further behind in the games than expected. He's had a heavy schedule. When we were all discussing about how planes were going to go, we were all unanimous in thinking LNG was going to go 4-0. And yet, I'm pretty sure we had also all ranked Homolife as a much better team than LNG overall in our like power rankings.
I think I had LNG higher, but same
I
point.
mean,
Yeah.
I had Homolife higher than LNG personally.
Okay, I think I had LNG higher because I am a fan of Iwandi, but I don't like just don't play Rakan. You're
Just,
not good.
yeah, and I think the way that the group stage played out as expected for me for LNG. LNG is very explosive and very good at their leads. At least during playoffs, they were. Because they usually had a lead and they blew it up and they never let go of the lead at any given point. During Worlds, it felt very much like they didn't know what to do with a gold lead because beforehand, play-ins teams, when they had gold deficits, had a hard time doing anything. And LNG played 4 games in the gold lead, now 5 games in gold lead. Right?
Yep.
And then you fast forward to group stage and they are in gold deficit huge amounts of the time, and they looked lost, and it's just really weird. It's like what?
It's partially because like it isn't as obvious like with those champions. Right? Like with Fiora, you're like, do I really want to jump into the entire team as Fiora, even if I'm really fed? Like, sure, it could work, but it also is quite dangerous. Like if he's playing Camille, for example, or something, it's just like, okay, I'm gonna jump in, drop my ult. Everybody else, jump in while I'm ulting. Like this is, it kind of feels like what you do. And like,
I feel like there's a disconnect, right? Because Fiora is not like when she was first reworked, where like being team fight was like a secondary function that can be easily done, right? Like her ultimate is technically a team fight reset. It's just you can't do the team fight reset now on Fiora now because she doesn't have the survivability to last long enough to pull that off. But when you're far ahead, Fiora is meant to be a pressure point.
Yeah.
She's a distraction at that point. And because you have the mobility and the abilities to really outdo them, they are always going to be trading down, chasing after the Fiora. And that is the thing that baffles me with a lot of these teams who are clearly ingrained in the team fight thought, but draft split push compositions or like split lane compositions where they don't dedicate to their win condition in that focus, and they ended up with like a top laner who regularly team fights with them, and then they lose out the pressure in the team fight because their team fight focus is totally out of whack.
Yep. Like, same thing with like the Tryndamere mids. It's like all of them are playing as mid laners. The way you like, having seen like, because what like Nemesis played originally, it's like, okay, you play mid lane for like the first 15-20 minutes. You do laning phase as your mid laner, sure, because you're not really going to die. It's like Gale Force Tryndamere. But then once it's like out of laning phase, if there's a side tower still up, you go to the side lane, right? Like you're playing you're not trying to help your team. You don't even go to team fights. It's just I am Flash Ghost Tryndamere with a Gale Force. I can get away from anything. I am just going to be in this side lane forever.
No, exactly. It feels very weird because this is a problem I've seen forever with competitive
Nobody did
league,
that.
right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if I've talked about it on a video at any given point, or I know I've talked about it ad addendum to hundreds, to not hundreds, but to like to dozens of you, regarding like there is a clear misunderstanding of win conditions at the moment, right?
Yeah.
Because this is mostly like speculative or like flies on the wall more than anything else. So it's really hard to like 100% say this is the case, right? But it's really easy to look once the draft is done and go, here are the clear win conditions that are not map specific, right? Because map specific win conditions are like the Dragon Soul, Baron, Elder Drake, so on and so forth. If the game goes 50 plus minutes, game should never be 50 plus minutes. Where you look at a composition that involves Irelia, Camille, Fiora, and the immediate thought process is that that's a split composition. It involves skirmishes at best if it involves any of those side laners, and disjointed like team fights where it's 4v5 and you have one person in the pressuring top side. And if nothing is done to get that person up ahead early in, or you've drafted yourself a composition with too many win conditions where the clear win condition is very muddled and you're forced to like split your resources between everything, then you've completely misunderstood your win condition at that point.
Yeah, like we all probably remember a couple of years ago, the actual proper 4-1 comps where it's like we're playing a Fiora and the Fiora is like, always in the bot lane while we're pressuring Baron. This is how we play this thing. We pressure Baron,
Yep.
get a teleport or something and retreat constantly. It's just the entire team comp is disengage with the Fiora. And it's just buying time, threatening Baron and stuff as 4 people to buy the Fiora time to take inhibitors.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was the team comp.
I do want
like a lot of teams did pretty good doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, they did. And I do want to preface this because I think it's a point of note because it used to be my favorite pastime to literally guess which team was going to win based off of team compositions. And that became much harder to do starting like 4 years ago. Now it's easier now the thing is like you have to tell what benchmarks at what point in times each team needs to hit to get through. And you can tell when a drafting mistake has been done where like one individual thing might break the whole game. But you can't look at 2 compositions as a whole and tell right off the bat which team is going to win. And there's like Twitter LS will do that all the time. It's like, oh, this team won the draft, but they're bad, so they're going to lose. And I'm like, well, if they won the draft so hard, then they're probably going to win if they're semi-competent. Like, that's not how drafting works. This is not season 3 where literally if one team picks a better composition forever and nobody does anything about it, cough, cough, Cloud9, literally for their entire summer season, then they're going to win. It's not how that works, right? Like drafting in and of itself requires a mindset of preparing for yourself and for the other team. And if you draft in a way that hurts your own win conditions, where like I don't remember which team did it, but like I can see this in my head. There was a Lucian bot Camille top lane. Or it was a Lucian bot and Jace top lane, sorry. And immediately my brain went, where are you allocating the gold? What do you do what is your immediately right now, Connor? You're the jungler. Where do you go?
I think what you do with those kind of team comps, when we see this sometimes, okay, we're playing, let's get a Jace top, let's get something that's got stronger, like even like an early game wave clear type thing and can push in the mid lane and can like has the ability to do stuff. So let's get what's something that's really good early wave clear. that you play mid. I don't know. We could even do like a triple AD thing or something, right?
But
Because
you're starting to see how this becomes much
like,
harder.
well, no, but what this turns into is something pushing in the mid lane, sure, and we have both of these. And what we're doing is we're going to say we are pushing in all 3 waves, and we have an early game jungler that's able to actually fight. And now we're saying we're gonna push in every single wave and then collapse on dragons, collapse on Rift Heralds, collapse to take all the scuttle crabs, and we gain full river control by pushing in every wave constantly. So it's not turning into a team comp of feed the Jace or feed the Lucian. It's a team comp of control the river.
Hold on, I think I actually do remember this because it's a Team Liquid game.
That's how I say a team comp. It's we push our lane, and then actually we are collapsing to support our jungle because we have lane priority. So we're collapsing first to constantly support our jungle. Make sure we always get every scuttle crab. We always, can collapse the dragons, can collapse the Rift Heralds. That's the idea, right? So it's like.
So here's the thing, right? So I'm gonna
contain the enemy jungler.
I'm gonna get
is
the actual game out. This was the Team Liquid versus LNG game. So this was on day 7. Team Liquid versus LNG. Can I please get the... Oh, cool. It doesn't actually give me the link. That's super unhelpful. Day 7. Come on.
You're talking Team Liquid was doing this, or?
Yeah, Team Liquid did this.
Okay, so the Graves top?
It's Team Liquid versus LNG. Game. I'm pretty sure it has a...
They played multiple times, so.
But it was Team Liquid versus LNG. It was like day 7 games.
The Trundle and the Viego, Lissandra versus LeBlanc.
Pick band. Stop. And we get to...
LNG has Ezreal Yuumi.
All right, here we go. This is... Oh, this is not the right game. What am I thinking of? Gosh, dang it. Team 2 score. No, Team Liquid was on blue. Oh, God. I will figure out which game this was because this was a Team Liquid game.
Okay.
LNG.
What were the champions? I'd be able to help.
Because, no, Alfari was playing a Jace.
Okay.
And it really hurt them. This is the So what I'm saying here more than anything else, because I can't remember the game, and I'm going to rack my brain forever for this, and I'll just waste time. It's the point of where I'm going with this is that, like, you can do this, but oftentimes it hinges on very precise timing.
The Grace Tristana game? Jace Tristana game?
That's it, yes.
Versus
right?
Genji?
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. And immediately when I see that, I see...
This is the tiebreaker game.
Oh, it was a tiebreaker game? Okay, perfect. Yeah. Yes, okay.
Yeah.
And, like, they were close. By all accounts, they were very close. It was just, if I wrote my notes here... So we started stacking terms. Hallmark of a solid team. Okay, my notes aren't helpful here. I'll just pull up the actual game. But if I remember correctly, the way that this was attacked was that the top side of the map ended up getting focused on very hard, and the bottom side of the map was just not pulling off. Just let me actually pull up the game instead of just like trying to remember a game that happened a while ago now. Day 7 tiebreakers, Team Liquid Genji, match history. Oh, match histories don't work. Great, that's fun. Yeah.
I have this as no, because Team Liquid did what they wanted to do in the early game. They had the lead at 10 to 14 minutes kind of thing. Because they were able to take the first tower, push in the top lane, prioritize the Jace, and constantly push all their waves. And
all right, I'm gonna because
get a gold lead.
Mm-hmm.
The reason they lost the game is more just BDD
because of
landed.
we talked about this.
The Zoe landed every skill shot.
Yeah.
It was the difference in that game. So it's
The
uh,
what was I trying to say? Right. It's because part of the way that like drafting can really hurt a game and decide a game is more about when you're trying to prepare for your team's ability to play a certain style of composition more than anything else. And if you don't have a clear win condition, then it's very easy for your opponents to attack the said win condition and pick their draft so that their win condition matches one side of the map and have a defensive option for the other side. The example, more or less, of anything is like if you have a strong top side and a strong bot side in your draft, literally the opponent just has to do just a decent defensive answer for the bot side and heavily index in top side, and then at that point, the automatic answer you're going to get from that is say, okay, cool, top side, we know that they're going to go there, play defensively, we're going to go bot side because they decided to do a losing matchup, and then you're going to, on purpose, weaken a part of your win condition because that's the right answer to do. And you're going to have a harder time allocating gold properly because your composition requires that there's a certain amount of gold at a certain point during the game.
okay.
Right? And if your composition is not online at given thresholds because you have made it harder for you to hit those thresholds at any given point and you have to answer based off of your opponent's drafts, then you're going to be hurting yourself over the course of the game. Now, this doesn't pan out all the time, especially if there's like a bunch of days where there's one-sided sweeps or a team doesn't draft or doesn't answer the draft in kind in a way that is like suitable. Like you'll see multiple times both teams will answer with like multiple win conditions and all given roles, and it'll be very unclear where they're aiming for. And that to me is still pretty bad regardless, and just benefits you if your opponent does an equally bad job drafting.
Yep.
And this is like, we just had a huge tangent about me saying like drafts do not decide games, but if you do not draft in a way that is conducive to your team's play style and your team's understanding of a win condition, then you might as well say one team has done the poor decision of drafting badly. I think it's the equivalent of like teams who are picking things just because it's good. What was it again? Is like Amumu being played forever in play-ins and had 2 games in all of groups.
Yeah.
Like, what's the win condition for Amumu? you hit good ultimates every so often. You make sure that you survive, and you have to have a large amount of focus in the bot side of the map.
The thing is also a lot of pro games. It's not. We'll see massive, huge team fights with 1 kill, right? This is a very common occurrence, right? People play. Okay, if we are not winning this fight, we disengage, right? So we'll see all the time. It's like here's a 1-for-1 when everybody used every ability.
Yeah.
When everybody uses every single ability in solo queue, there's more than 2 kills. That's something you'll probably notice. It depends on your elo, but like, they recognize, okay, we are not winning this fight. Let's disengage it, right? And they're not gonna play into something they're losing, right? So this will happen a lot where there's not full big fights. Even the supports are like, okay, we go in. No, this isn't a good chance. Okay, we get out, right? Amumu has no way of getting out. So it's like a lot of the teams you will notice in those games, this is going way back, but like the Amumu goes in and they say, you know what? We don't win this. And they just leave the Amumu to die. A lot. Because Amumu has absolutely zero way of getting out of anything.
Yeah. I think that just encourages what I mean. Like, when people pick things and they don't take into account what your win conditions are, right? And if you realize that team fights are not hyper dedicated at this point, why would you still pick it? Sure, it's strong, but that is not the meta. The number of times that there are things that exist that are incredibly strong right now but are not being picked because they're not the meta is because there's like an understanding of what their win conditions mean from it. We've talked
I'm
about
still confused about the Seraphine though.
Yeah,
because
but that's exactly
it has lane pressure, it has poke, It has the full team healing when you get your scaling up. Because you're not fighting that often. So Seraphine's great. We're like, okay, we keep you alive. We poke a little bit with our just max range Qs to try to poke, heal everybody up. And then just when there's a team fight, I will have my ultimate ready. Why isn't Seraphine good? Anyway.
You're telling me it just determines that their win conditions that are set up right now for a team is just not that. Because it's no longer a scenario of like, oh, here is the best combination. It is what are teams comfortable with, and are they drafting in a ways where their win conditions line up with their playstyle? Like, don't pick a topside strong team composition if your topside historically is not that good at doing that, right? Or if you're not prepared for doing so. You might as well have a losing draft even if you have a winning draft on paper, quote unquote.
Yeah, and like the things that I'm missing is kind of weird because like Morgana e-buffs, nobody's picking Morgana into Zoe. That I don't know. That just feels like the very obvious go-to counter pick.
I think it's also because like
Chain a Zoe.
a lot of teams are feeling hesitant about what's going on. The what's the whole adage is like it's comfort over statistics a lot of the times. And given how close, and I think this is something that was well recognized early in, the only team that I think has come in with the panache to say and go like, we will beat you 100% of the time is Damwon. Every other team came in today and looked at some of the teams, even the lower seeded teams, and went, nope, we're not going to try anything, and then just didn't.
And that's the one thing to be said about Cloud9 and Rogue.
Yes.
They will actually fight. So it's like, even if they're not necessarily the best at it, the fact that they are willing to take a fight occasionally is the difference. Because FBX was not. They did not want to fight.
That's also something that I found very weird during this group is the hesitancy of fighting. Like you briefly touched on it, but like team fights are going 1-1 or 1-0 on a whole lot of times.
Yep.
And I started a lot of these videos for the summer season going like, these are all team fighting teams. There is not, you go down the list of all 22 teams. You tell me which team is not a team fighting team.
Yep.
I think there's one team that was like, this is the worst team fighting team, and it was Homolife. And that's saying something because Homolife is still pretty much a team fighting team on paper because it's just Chovy.
Think about, the champs in the meta. It's like, well, the Jarvan is going to get his EQ back up and dash away. And like the Xin Zhao is going to hit his ultimate and then run away. Right? Like all of these, the jungler, it's like, okay, even the Gwen is going to go immune and then run away. The Kennen's going to be like, nope, get his E back and then run away. Like, Proto Belt away. Like, Misfortune gets her movement speed, presses W and runs away. Like, all of these things, even like the Rel and the Rakan, are just going to use their main dashes to jump away. Like, we're seeing that constantly. We're picking all champions that have the ability to just say nope to fights. You know, LeBlanc, the most obvious, nope. Right? So, yeah, we're not getting crazy numbers of kills because the majority of the champions that are meta are the stuff that's able to say, okay, our entire team can just instantly back off if we don't like the way this fight's going.
Okay. So, I want to, as we're approaching closer to the end of this, we talked a lot about a lot of speculative stuff during the group stuff and our general
But one
vibe.
last point on that.
Yes.
I think the one thing that's changed, though, is it used to be we would rather lose a 5-person team fight. We would rather try than give up Baron or an Infernal Soul kind of thing. I think teams are saying now, you know what? If we lose the team fight badly and it's like a 5-for-1, even if we end up like stealing the dragon or something, that's not worth it. Because they've slightly lowered the value on the objectives, so they're saying, you know what? We'd rather give up the free Mountain Soul than have all 5 of us die.
I think the only time that's not true is for Elder, which is why we see so many fights at Elder.
Yeah.
Like, I know there's not that many.
Why the game's taking way longer.
Yeah. Which is super weird because it shouldn't be taking longer. The laning phases should be longer. That's expected. But the games
Teams
themselves
aren't willing to fight they're willing to fight, but they're not willing to take an all or nothing win or lose fight.
Yeah.
For a Baron or a Dragon Soul.
And so this is where I think this is gonna change, is that because of the given teams that have made it through, and because they're already here and they know what kind of teams they're going to be facing up against, like the bottom, what is it? We have 2 literal rematches for best of 5s. It's RNG and EDG, who I don't think played against each other during the playoffs, but they did play during the season. They have best of 3 series. And so they know how they play against each other. We're going to see much more aggressive games from that. T1 versus Homolife, also we're going to see much more aggressive games from that. And we've got Cloud9 versus Gen.G. We're going to see more aggressive games from that. And then we're going to have Mad Lions versus Damwon. And Damwon is the only team playing aggressive with shorter games. So we're going to have 4-for-4 series with teams who are either familiar or opts into being aggressive on a regular basis. And so we have to have a meta shift at this point. I called the meta shift between play-ins and groups. I think that because of the way these particular seeds were drawn, we're going to get another major meta shift going into bracket.
I was pretty happy about. We did get a few things right. Like, for example, I'm like, someone's gonna pick Ashe. Immediately happens. Yeah. I was like, it's too reliable at being what it is.
Yeah.
When your team comp needs it, right? So I'm like, someone's just gonna say like, let's just reliable old Ashe to get the engage out of the bot lane. They immediately go for it. So.
I do want to get your thoughts though. Do you like which teams were drawn against each other?
Yeah, let's look at the quarterfinals. So we got RNG, EDG. So that's our 2 Chinese teams facing off. So we got 1 Chinese team in the semifinal. So it's worth saying our likely China or someone else
It's
final
gone.
is not going to happen.
Not
Yep.
happening.
Then we got a.
It is still It's still likely, super unlikely to get a China-Europe final again. They're on opposite sides of the bracket.
Yeah, it requires Mad beating Damwon.
Don't say it like that. Just say
no,
it
but like
vaguely.
if we're saying Mad hasn't shown up to the level we expect them to.
True. Yeah, that's right.
It's saying, hey, does a full power Mad at the best we've seen them at least give Damwon a run for their money?
No.
That's the question.
No.
Okay.
No.
Right.
I will say on an average day, Damwon against the best of days, Mad Lions is not a great look. And that was when Khan was not performing. And this is Khan's final year. He's performing.
I mean,
he's. I don't think that Mad is going to have much of a chance.
yes.
It's not happening.
But now at the same time, people are always talking about T1, the rest of the team not showing up, like it's their version of like Faker in the Wards. But the rest of the team is playing a bit better, especially day 2.
Mm-hmm. I think
Keria, I've always thought was great, but
if we were to look at the situation, Homolife and Gen.G are the 2 weaker best of 5 Korean teams. And I do want to remind some people that when we did our last World Watch video, right before World started, we had said a bunch of teams that we thought if they made it to the semifinals, we would get their jerseys. That was every LCS team, Mad Lions, Fnatic, and PSG. So that was 6 teams that we had decided, right? So there was a statistical likelihood of all 4 teams, like 4 spots being filled in by things that we chose. We now have 2 teams, one of which is almost guaranteed to not make it. Fingers crossed, who knows what happens. So Mad Lions is out.
Yeah.
Given that Gen.G we have very, very sparse data on in best of 5s this year. Very sparse.
Yeah.
And all of that data is not good. Their best of 5 performances are not great. Now, is Cloud9's better? Not much better. But Cloud9 has also been historically a much more adaptive team during international tournaments. Is there a world that Cloud9 beats Gen.G?
Huh. Yeah, that's that gets kind of interesting because it turns into things like where does Cloud9 win that matchup? Right?
Yeah.
And like usually Cloud9's able to say, you know what, Perks can probably maybe outplay someone in North America or something, but BDD, same thing. Like, I don't think Fudge is better than Rascal or anything. So I think what that turns into is if Cloud9 is going to win that series,
Yeah.
it needs to be the Blabber show.
Yeah.
Like, it needs, like, we just need Blabbers, Olaf, like
5 out of 5 times.
that kind of thing, right? Like, he's looking at multiple champions. It's not just as Olaf, but like, that's what it's going to need to turn into. He's going to need to like be in his opponent's jungle. Like, that's kind of what I want to see the Cloud9 to do that. I know you don't like it, but pick the Jace Lucian, push the lanes in, and just play around Blabber. You don't pick Jace to win your lane. You pick Jace to say, I'm going to rotate and support Blabber, invade the opponent's jungle, get all the deep wards in, track Klid every second of the game so you know where he's going so that he can't collapse on you, and just play to like Blabber is our win condition.
I think this
that you just sit back and farm like he
Mhm.
does.
Well, this is why I mentioned there will be a meta shift, right? Like the first game to come up for the bracket stage, all right, is the T1 versus Homolife, right? All of these games that are going to come up, every single one of them are 2 teams that know they're going to be playing against somebody who's aggressive.
I have one thing to throw in with that.
Yes.
Blabber's Kindred.
I swear to God, if I see a single team pick Kindred in this meta right now, they're going to automatically lose. I know I said that draft decisions don't usually. I know.
Pick Kindred, pick Gragas to just throw everybody out of your ultimate. Like,
no.
No?
Unfortunately,
Nope.
that's where you straight up were like, oh, or passive extending laning phases are not going to happen. Kindred's going to die over and over and over again. No amount of lane priority or anything like that is ever going to make it like, oh, yes. Like Kindred, where we can tell exactly what her map movement is going to be, is totally going to get any sort of leads. It's not going to happen. And if somebody loses to it, they deserve to be out of the tournament. That's all. That's what I...
You don't think Kindred with like 3 pushing lanes?
With 3... If you have 3 pushing lanes, okay, and you're not being ganked at any given point, Kindred can't be everywhere. Kindred is very easily tracked. Kindred is the most trackable jungler in the game.
Sure.
Right? And if you have 3 pushing lanes against you and you cannot capitalize on that to get ganks in, cross map against somebody who can't answer, especially if you're Kindred, you're likely going to be always pivoting towards the top side of the map because that's how you're going to make sure to get leads. You need to make sure you hold on a lot of heralds. That you just make teleport dives bot lane all the time. You just go bot side.
Sure.
You do teleport dive, and if they're pushing in, you just immediately have like 5 people coming in to get rid of the other person, and you're always proactive because the other team is trying to pay attention to make sure that their Kindred's not going to die all the time. So if in the situation you have Kindred who gets ganked all the time, or you pick 3 pushing lanes and then your bot side dies all the time, I see no positive outcome to Kindred.
Okay.
And if some team loses to Kindred, they deserve to be out of the tournament. Harsh words, yes, but it's the truth.
We put the Gragas at the support so that when they dive us, we just ult them away. Okay, that's it.
So I would like to get my predictions. To me, are just fairly super simple on this matter. But who do you have going into semis?
Semis. Okay. I have. Let me switch back to the picture. EDG, Genji. I mean, I think it's pretty easy to say like top team in each one. Just I guess EDG spot. EDG, Genji, T1, DK.
Yep. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I want to say how very obvious it is.
EDG, Damwon is the final.
Yeah. It's very easy to look at this and go, "Oh, this is the expected outcome."
Yeah.
Now, my next question, which is the much more interesting question, because the predictions are pretty straightforward. I'm gonna have my fiance predict for 3 out of 4 of these because I picked DK to go all the way, and so they'll probably pick any random team or try to ask questions and be wild about it. How many of these series do you think are going to be 3-0?
Ooh. Maybe Damwon. I expect more 3-1s, I think.
Yep. Yeah. In fact, I actually expect 3-2s for the Gen G C9.
Yeah. Really?
Yep.
I put that as 3-1 Genji. But okay, similar idea.
I think that 3-1 for T1 Homolife makes sense. That's very similar to the historics of those two teams playing against each other. And I think it's going to be 3-2 RNG EDG. And I think EDG winning, but 3-2. I think we're going to get 2 5-game series.
EDG 3-2.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be my second choice. If you ask me like what would be the second 3-0. I don't expect it, but like if there was going to be another 3-0, that would be it.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Okay.
Both of these teams have strong showings in terms of best of fives and are very flexible, and they both have lost best of fives that went to 5 games. It is whichever team loses doesn't lose gracefully. They fight all the way through. So that's why I expect that to go to a 5-game series. I don't expect T1 Homolife to go to a 5-game series, but I would be hard-pressed to say that Homolife does not win a game. Given T1's very interesting decisions for across the board of many things. And I would say it is a success if Mad Lions takes a game against M1.
Okay.
I think Dam1 is on course of possibly being on a course of being possibly an undefeated team going into the finals. Okay. During the summer, they've only lost a game in the best of 5 against T1. And a single game. They just lost a single game. They're pretty spectacular in best of 5s.
I looked at our predictions to see, and I accidentally opened up last year's predictions and got very confused. I was like, top? Why is top esports here? Okay, that's it. Despite the 3-way tie, I did get Group D perfect.
Despite the 3-way tie, you did get 3.
Or 4-way tie, sorry.
Yeah, I put adjustments to all of them.
Yep.
Jeez Louise. My final question for you, okay, is, and we're going to go back to your the cool part of this whole show, and that's the champion so far, champion stats. How many champions
We are at 85.
We are 88,
So it's-
actually.
88?
We're at 88 total. 88
I'm not
champion
looking at-
statistics. Oh no, there's what is it, 88 or 87? Champion statistics. 88 total games played with 87 champions contested. There's been 87.
I might be looking at the thing that doesn't include play-ins again,
Yeah.
possibly.
So there's been 87 champions contested. Now I have said that it would not go past 88.
You
And
did?
you said that it would get to 90.
Yeah, 92 was the
You'd say 92. Do you think between now and the finals that we will get 5 new champions? Pick, ban.
I'm just looking at it, and it's like you have to look at that and think of, okay, almost like calling them, right? And I'm like, I guess Seraphine's been banned, so it wouldn't actually count, but like Seraphine. So I guess it doesn't count. It's mid. But Morgana? Like Morgana is reliable enough at what she does. Right? To the fact that like really no Morgana? Like it really in most years it's like, well, if we need to just stop something from happening, Morgana's like the best way to do that.
Do you
So
know
it's
which
kind
two champions have not been picked yet, despite assassin junglers being a whole thing?
Kindred. Evelyn?
Okay, 3 champions. I'm sorry. I don't know how I forgot that one. Rengar and Kha'Zix.
Rengar got a big buff.
If I
Sure.
was to expect anything coming new, I think it's all jungle champions.
Okay, you think jungle, I think a couple new supports.
Yeah.
Maybe the Soraka could be seen.
Maybe the Soraka. Yeah, I did mention
Or
that.
the Sona, which got reworked. The thing is, we haven't seen pro play on the Sona rework, so it's really hard to say if the Sona rework actually does anything.
Yeah, that's true.
It hasn't been picked up, so maybe not. But
Watch literally the first game of T1 Homolife. Sona gets picked.
oh, it did.
No, just watch the first game of that series coming up on Friday.
Oh.
8 a.m.
I was like, oh, it happened
Sona
before
gets picked. Oh,
Like
that'd
the
be
games are going
hilarious.
longer, and the way Sona works now is she just passively stacks ability haste throughout the game.
True.
So if it's a longer, slower game, she can sit back and do that, boy.
That's hilarious. All right. Well,
Okay, I'm expecting some new supports. You're expecting some new junglers. Okay.
oh yeah. I mean, if new ones come up, I only expect one more to show up. But if it's gonna be anything, it's likely a jungle in my head. But
Yeah.
we'll see.
Have we? Weird question, just because I don't remember it at all. Have we even seen Diana this Worlds?
I can answer that really quickly. No,
Yeah, if
we
you have,
have not.
no Diana.
No Diana at all, despite
did
its
get dark.
huge presence. Way just before Worlds, no Diana.
Huh.
And nothing was really changed to her, was it? Or no, there's
It
slight
was.
nerfs.
It was like her attack speed in the jungle or something.
That would explain it. Yeah.
So
Well, with that, I'll say to all those who are watching, you guys let us know your thoughts. Who are you expecting to win? How many games do you think is going to happen? Do you expect new champs coming in? What are your predictions on all that? We really appreciate all of those who watch. It's fantastic. If you did enjoy these videos, like and subscribe with everything. We're likely to have another video, hopefully with Josh, if his schedule allows it, come for after quarters are done for the semifinals. But until then, I'm Sam. It's Connor. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
see you next time.